Oh, oops. Hey guys. Hey, Cool Gamer. Hey, Dragon Mama. Hey, Brenda Paws. I found some videos here on this channel, and it's all about Jack the Ripper. Actually, there's one here, and it's called The Leather Apron Scare and Jack the Ripper. That's what they were calling the murderer as Jack, or not before Jack the Ripper was the leather apron guy. I'm just trying to go back to one of the first murders so we can kind of watch that. There's a lot more murders here than I realized. There's Mary Nichols. We can do that one. Yeah, that was her first. That was the first
The
victim.
life and death of
Bless you. Come on. Not on there. You can come here. Over here. There. Good? Ugh. Yeah, true. Right, Dragon. Okay, so right now we're on chapter 6. And it says September 1888. Dr. Anderson on sick leave and the question of a reward. The departure of James Monroe as Assistant Commissioner in charge of the CID from Scotland Yard is noted in the Metropolitan Police Entry Book. September 1st, 1888. Hey, Zuna. Oh, Zuna. I found another book besides the one I was reading about the letters from the Looney Bin. There's another one, and it's letters from this asylum that were found in someone's attic. Yeah, so that I ordered that book, and I ordered the one on Nellie Bly, her 10 days in a madhouse, because I think that's why I wanted to do them anyway, like why I wanted to do cover the letters and stuff like that. So I was thinking, what I think Wednesday and Thursday I get one of the books anyways, and we'll start reading that as well. So I thought that would be cool. There's more letters. I don't know, I find them fascinating. 1st September 1888. Sir, I am directed by the Secretary of State to inform you that upon the retirement of Mr. Monroe on the 31st, Mr. A. Carmichael Bruce be- becomes one of the senior assistant commissioners of police and will receive the same salary and allowances from the police funds as are usually paid to the senior assistant commissioner. So they get a salary, a house, a dockyard visits, allowance for working, telegraph at home, and allowances for tolls and bailing, with one horse stabling, keep and see. I don't know what that means. The commissioner of police for the metropolises. Yeah, I'm done it. It was a short book, so I'm all done the that. So finish catching up, and then I'm trying to think. Well, I guess Wednesday I'll start. It's the police headquarters. Yeah, I figured it was something like that. Yeah. I do remember hearing that before. I think I must have been researching or talking about um Jack the Ripper or something. I remember reading about Scotland Yard. So it is the police station or headquarters. Okay. The new junior assistant commissioner is in charge of the criminal investigation department at Scotland Yard was Dr. Robert Anderson. He had taken up his post on 1st September 1888, succeeding James Monroe. The office police entry book, contains a letter referring to Anderson's appointment. Mr. Robert Anderson will, from this day's date inclusive, be placed in charge of the criminal investigation department as a junior assistant commissioner and will receive the following salary and allowances. And it just says exact same thing I just read. So he gets one hearse to keep, The whole of the salary and allowances are to be paid from the police fund. I am, sir, your obedient servant. Anderson's pension record shows that he was appointed third assistant commissioner of Metropolitan Police, 25th August, 1888. There's an interesting letter from Warren to Anderson dated 28th of August, 1888, and this is as follows. Dear Mr. Anderson, I expect to return to London about 7th September, and I see no reason why you should not be able to go on leave a day or two after. You do not say how long you wish to be away, but this will no doubt depend upon the position of affairs. Hey, Deb. I was actually like 5 minutes late too. Last year, we had a good deal of disturbance in October, and if the unusual matter we have lately experienced puts men out of work, we may expect a good deal of trouble this winter. If a month will be enough to put your throat right, I think we can manage it. Yours truly, Charles Warren. Anderson took up his new post for the first week of September, but on the 8th, under doctor's orders, he left for a month's recuperative holiday in Switzerland. It was the day of Annie Chapman's murder. The CID at this crucial time was left without its mischief. These are very long chapters on Annie Chapman. I've noticed like the first few victims. Oh, okay, Dragon. You want people to see you. Is that what you want? It's all about the Claire. A revealing document relevant to the Whitechapel murders inquiry surfaced in October 1987. Oh, here's a newer one. It belonged to James Swanson, grandson of Chief Inspector Donald Sutherland Swanson. This document, appointing Swanson to take over overall charge of the inquiry and dated 15 September 1888, originated from Sir Charles Warren, but was probably mainly written by his secretary at his dictation. It reads as follows. ACCID. Well, it's like, I think she wants her own show. I swear. Hey, Mama 3. Oh, no worries. I was late too. I'm convinced that the Whitechapel murder case is one which can be successfully grappled with if it is systematically taken in hand. I go so far as to say that I could myself, in a few days, unravel the mystery provided I could spare the time and give individual attention to it. I feel, therefore, the utmost importance to be attached to putting the whole central office work in this case in the hands of one man who will have nothing else to concern himself with. Neither you or I or Mr. Williamson can do this. I therefore put it in the hands of Chief Inspector Swanson, who must be acquainted with every detail. I look upon him for the time being as the eyes and ears of the commissioner in this particular case. He must have a room to himself, and every paper, every document, every report, every telegram must pass through his hands. He must be consulted on every telegram. Subject. I would not send any directions anywhere on the subject of the murder without consulting him. I give him the whole responsibility. On the other hand, he should consult Mr. Williamson, you or myself on every important particular before any action, unless there is some extreme urgency. I find that a most important letter was sent to division yesterday without his seeing it. This is quite an error and should not occur again. All the papers in central office on the subject of murder must be kept in his room and plans of the positions and see. I must have this matter at once put on proper footing so as to be a guide for the future in cases of importance. Everything depends upon a careful compliance with these decisions. This following paragraph is written in Warren's own hand. Every document, letter received, or telegram on the subject should go to his room before being directed, and he should be responsible for its being directed when necessary. This is to avoid the possibility of documents being delayed or action retarded. There is a marginal annexation at the left margin at the start of the document. Mr. Williamson, supped shore, and Chief Inspector Swanson to see. The continuous question of a reward was the subject of the next communication with the Home Office and appears under a file cover dated 10th September 1888. And this is stamped, this letter here. It says Home Office, 10th September 1888. Commissioner of Police references. Includes copy communication from Mr. Samuel Montagu, MP for the Whitechapel, expressing his desire to offer a $100 reward for the discovery and conviction of the murderer or murders of a woman in Hanbury Street on the 8th. Request earliest possible instructions. There's another marginal note against the above. It says first decision of Sir W. Hancourt not to grant rewards. Second case, Middlesborough murder. Letter to London City Council explaining reasons for change of practice. Sir R. Cross concurs. And it says very pressing minutes. These are like the actual letters. It's crazy. Oh, hey, Alberta. I hope you're feeling better. The HL rules is against offering rewards, and even if exceptions to the rule are to be allowed, I think this case is the last in which it should be done. It is generally agreed that the Whitechapel murderer has no accomplices who could betray him. Any person other than an accomplice who possesses information would be certain in present state of public feeling to give it without prospect of reward. On the other hand, the offer of reward be almost certain to produce false information. Even if the case were a proper one for reward, the MP for the district is not the proper person to offer it. Of course, softs cannot forbid Mr. Montagu to publish the offer, but he can forbid police to give their authority to it. Question mark say that had the case been considered a proper one for the offer of a reward, would at once have offered on behalf of the government, but the practice of offering rewards was discontinued some years ago because experience showed that in their general effect, such offers were produce more harm than good. This is all over the place and doesn't make any sense. At once have offered one on the behalf of the government, but the practice of offering rewards was discontinued years ago. Were produce more harm than good. And the softs is and does not, and that was deleted apparently. Thinks the present case one in which there's special risk that the offer of a reward might hinder rather than promote the end of justice, and that the offer of a reward, while any person is under arrest on suspicion, is open to special objections and is never, not at any time, be allowed. This was Mr. Matthews. And you okay? Another letter for Mr. Matthews. Home Office on 10th September 1888, 4 Whitehall Place. Sir, the Commissioner of Police of the Metropolis has to acquaint you, for the information of the Secretary of State, that he has received communication for Mr. Samuel Montagu, MP for the Whitechapel, expressing his desire to offer a reward of $100 for the discovery and conviction of the murderer or murderers of a woman in Hanbury Street on the 8th. The Commissioner will be glad to receive the instructions of the Secretary of State in the matter at his earliest convenience, as Mr. Montagu is anxious that no time should be lost. I am, sir, your most obedient servant, A.C. Bruce, Assistant Commissioner. A.C. Bruce, which is Assistant Commissioner. The Under Secretary of State. The letter written by Samuel Montagu, dated 10th September, is as follows. Dear Sir, feeling keenly the slur cast upon my constabulary by the recent murders and the non-discovery of the criminal or criminals, I hereby authorize you to print and distribute at my expense posters offering $100 reward for the discovery and conviction of the murderer or murderers, which reward I will pay. Samuel Montagu, member for Whitechapel. A reply to the police concerning this letter from the Home Office is as follows. And this was written on September 13th, 1888. Sir, I am directed by the Secretary of State to acknowledge the receipt of your letter of the 10th instant, forwarding copy of a letter from Mr. S. Montagu, MP, in which he offers to pay a reward of $100 for the discovery and conviction of the murderer or murderers of a woman in Hanbury Street on the 8th instant, and asking for the Secretary of State's instructions. And in reply, I am to say that, had the case been considered a proper one for the offer of a reward, the Secretary of State would at once have offered one on behalf of the government, but that the practice of offering rewards was discontinued some years ago because experience showed that in their general effect, such offers produce more harm than good, and the Secretary of State thinks the present case, one in which there is special risk, that the offer of a reward might hinder rather than promote the ends of justice. I am to add that the offer of a reward, while any person is under arrest on suspicion, is open to special objections and has not at any time been allowed. I am, sir, your obedient servant. And this is the Commissioner of Metropolitan Police. A letter dated the 18th of September, 1888, from Mr. Montague to Sir Charles Warren is worded as follows. Dear Sir Charles, the letter of the 15th September, signed by the Assistant Commissioner and addressed to the 12 Kensington Palace Gardens, reached me only last night. The opinion of the Home Security that no reward, they're fighting over this damn reward. So the rewards were discontinued. So either leave it at that or like all this back and forth just seems unnecessary. It's a yes or no question. It's discontinued, which they say it is, then drop it. I don't understand this. The opinion of the Home Secretary that no reward should be offered for the discovery of the perpetrator of the Whitechapel murders is not in accord with the general feeling on the subject. The argument advanced by some that the expectation of a possible increase in the amount of the reward might deter a prompt disclosure and could not apply in respect to my offer. Nevertheless, had the decision of the Home Security been promptly obtained and communicated to me, I should not have intervened in this matter. On Monday the 10th, about midday, I made my offer to Inspector West. He stated that he would submit it to you. On the Tuesday, he called here and said that the proposal had been submitted to the Home Office and he thought it would be favorably received. I regret that you did not obtain the decision of the Home Secrecy at once by telegram because on Tuesday my proposal must have transpired and was published in the daily papers on Wednesday last. Oh, that would be why. Under these circumstances, it's too late to withdraw my offer, and in case information is received leading to conviction of the murderer or murderers, I must pay the $100 to the person entitled to receive it. It remains for you to decide whether notices of the reward shall be posted up in the Whitechapel by the police at my expense. Otherwise, I shall not take any further action but await the results of the investigation now pending. I may add that, when I made the proposal, I was not aware that the government had ceased to offer rewards in cases of murder. Yours very truly, Samuel Montague. A letter from Sir Charles Warren to Mr. Montague, dated 19th September, 1888, but endorsed, not sent, by Sir C. Warren's directions. And it says private. You've been doing yard work? Yeah, we still got snow. There's no point for me. September 19th, 1888. So here's the back and forth again. Dear Mr. Montague, your letter was received on 10th September and submitted to H office the same day. It was impossible for me to have replied to you on Wednesday 12th as I had not received the reply on that date. My letter to you should have been received on Saturday night, 15th, and if you will forward to me the envelope that the postmarks are on it, I will ascertain how it was that you did not receive it in the Monday night. Sounds to me like now they're just arguing. Snooty snobs, yeah. As, however, you say that your offer must have transpired on Tuesday the 11th, I do not see that any subsequent delay affects the matter. I have no power to decide whether notices of any reward offered by you should be posted in Whitechapel by police at your expense. The police would not undertake this after the S of S expression of opinion on subject. There is no request in your letter of the 10th September for an immediate reply by telegraph, and the acting superintendent informs me that he told you at the time that he did not think the offer of a reward should be made until result of investigation in case of man then in custody was known. I can only regret that you should have thought fit to impute delay to me in a matter entirely outside my control and duties. It was a matter lying entirely between you and the S of state, and if you required an immediate reply, you could have telegraphed the Sec of state himself, deleted yourself. After the receipt of your letters of September 18th, I only regret that I did not reply to you requesting that you would communicate your wishes to the S of state yourself. Truly yours, C. Warren. The question of reward was raised again, holy crap, and is contained in a file cover dated 16 September 1888, and it's stamped Home Office 17 September 88, received date 16th, 1888. And the references and see the East End Murders rewards on behalf of the committee of state to augment the fund which they are about to raise for the discovery of the murderer or murderers, or that he will kindly state his reasons for declining. Pressing minutes. Say that had the reward was deleted, considered the case a proper one for the offer of reward, he would at once have offered on behalf of the government, but say, which was deleted, that the practice of offering rewards for the discovery of criminals was discontinued some years ago because experience showed that such offers of rewards tended to produce more harm than good. Okay, I get that. This back and forth is just, it's already went through. He's got the reward out. Now people are going to be expecting reward. That's it. That's all. It's done. You know what I'm saying? Like, enough already. And the S of S is satisfied that there is nothing in the present was deleted, circumstances of this present case to justify a departure from this rule. Well, it's kind of late now. They have it out. A copy of the House office letter dated 17 September 1888 is included, and this was a copy. Whitehall, 17 September 1888. Sir, I'm directed by the Secretary of State to acknowledge the receipt of your letter of the 16th instant with reference to the question of the offer of a reward for the discovery of perpetrators of the recent murders in Whitechapel, and I am to inform you that had the Secretary of State considered the case a proper one for the offer of reward, he would at once have offered one on behalf of the government, but that the practice of offering rewards for the discovery of criminals was discontinued some years ago because experience showed that such offers of rewards tended to produce more harm than good. And the Secretary of State is satisfied there is nothing in the circumstances of the present case to justify a departure from this rule. I am, sir, your obedient servant, E. Lee Pemberton. It's driving me nuts. Oh, nice. Well, happy Mother's Day, Zuner. This letter is from Mr. Harris. Sir, at a meeting of the was deleted, a committee held at the above address, it was resolved to approach you on the subject of the reward we are about to issue for the discovery of the author or authors of the late atrocities in the East End of London, and to ask you, sir, to augment our fund for the said purpose, or kindly state your reasons for refusing. Waiting your reply. I am, sir, yours obediently, B. Harris. Reports from the Home Office files now follow. The first memo by J.S. Sandars, assistant to E.G. Ruggles Bryce, the private secretary to the Home Security, Henry Matthews. Don't you press the power off? What are you doing? Oh, you have no kids. Oh, no, but you have a mother, right? So I'm assuming that's what you're doing. Spending with family. Oh my God. So dated 19 September 1888 on Secretary of State Home Department headed paper. A note in the top left corner of this report states, Mr. Bryce, this ought perhaps to be put with other papers, R.E. the Whitechapel murders. Mr. Matthews, Mr. Ruggles Bryce left town on Monday but returned this afternoon. I sent on your memo to him, to Sir Charles Warren, this morning for observation. What are you doing? You want to move, please? This thing. You are not going to go with your ass in my face. All right, go down. Crazy girl. Sir Charles came to see me both yesterday and today about the Whitechapel murders, and his note deals with such information as he mentioned as being in the possession of the police. But he remarked to me very strongly upon the great hindrance which is caused to the efforts of the police by the activity of agents of press associations and the efforts of the police by the activity of agents. I just read that. Which is caused to the efforts of the police by the activity of the agents of holy frig. I keep reading the same thing. There's so many of the same words. And newspapers. These toots follow the detectives wherever they go in search of clues, and then having interviewed persons with whom the police have conversation and from whom the inquiries were made, compile the paragraphs which will fill the papers. This practice impedes the usefulness of detective investigation and moreover keeps alive the excitement in the district and elsewhere. An irritation I had accepted for the first part of this week has been postponed, and I do not leave town until Friday. An irritation. I'm wondering if he's talking about the reward. There then follows a report by Sir Charles Warren, dated the 19th September 1888. And this Sir Charles Warren is the one who offered the reward out of his own pocket to pay. Mr. Ruggles Bryce, in reply to Mr. Matthews' note, which I return, no progress has yet been made in obtaining any definite clue to the Whitechapel murderers. A great number of clues have been examined and exhausted without finding anything suspicious. A large staff of men are employed and every point is being examined, which seems to offer our prospect of a discovery. There are at present 3 cases of suspicion. Number 1, the lunatic Sen Smith, a Swiss arrested at Holloway, who is now in the asylum at Bow, and arrangements are being made to ascertain whether he's the man who was seen on the morning of the murder in a public house by Mrs. Fittymont. Number 2, a man called Puckeridge was released from an asylum on 4 August. He was educated as a surgeon, has threatened to rip people up with a long knife. He is being looked for, but cannot be found as yet. Well, that kind of makes me feel like that might be a number 1 suspect. Number 3, a brothel keeper who will not give her address or name writes to say that a man living in her house was seen with blood on him on the morning of a murder. She described his appearance and said where he might be seen. When the detectives came near him, he bolted, got away, and there's no clue to the writer of the letter. All these 3 cases are being followed up and no doubt will be exhausted in a few days. The first seems a very suspicious case, but the man is at present a violent lunatic. I will say tomorrow if anything turns up about him. Moreover, the reporters for the press are following our detectives about everywhere in search of news and cross-examine all parties interviewed so that they impede a police action greatly. They do not, however, as yet know of the cases 2 and 3. The response of the respectable residents and tradesmen of the area was to form the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, and a letter was received by the Home Office dated 25th September 1888 from this body as follows. Date 24th September 1888, the Vigilance Committee, Whitechapel Murders, requests of S. to attend a meeting of the inhabitants of the Vigilance Committee with respect to the refusal to offer a reward. Then it says minutes. I don't understand what this means. Action? No, can't be actions. Something and say S. regrets he is unable to attend the Vigilance Committee as proposed by them. Okay. At the bottom, it says the Crown, 74 Mile End Road, 24 September 1888. To the Right Honorable the Home Security. Sir, the Vigilance Committee think it's advisable at the receipt of the letter from the Home Security wherein he refuses to grant or issue a reward for the apprehension of the author or authors of the recent murders in the east of London, to lay his letter before the public at a general meeting of his inhabitants. Will you, sir, do us the honor to attend at a time and place convenient to yourself and give us the benefit of your advice and counsel? I am, sir, yours obediently, B. Harris, to the Vigilance Committee. Now we're on chapter 7, and this one's a new murder. This one is 30th September 1888, and it's the murder of Elizabeth Stride. Let's see how this is. 3 weeks later, in the early hours of Sunday, 30th September 1888, the residents of the East End of London were again terrorized by savage murder committed by an unknown killer. 2 victims were to fall in the area in one night, the first being Elizabeth Stride, whose throat was savagely cut in Dutfield's Yard, Berner Street, St. George's in the East. What is not generally known is that a third woman was murdered by having her throat cut on the same night, shortly before the murder of Stride, and only about 3 miles away. This demonstrates the long arm of coincidence and the prevalence of domestic murder. In this case, the husband gave himself up, so the particular killing is all but forgotten and cannot be added to the Ripper's tally. The Times of Monday, 1st October 1888 reported, "Murder in Westminster. A murder was committed in Westminster on Saturday, shortly before midnight. John Brown, a gardener employed in St. James Park, asked the police at Rochester Row Police Station to permit him to see the inspector on duty. He was brought before the Inspector Farley, to whom he stated that he had killed his wife, and that her body would be found at their place in Regency Street, near the Horse Ferry Road. He handed the inspector a large spring-backed clasp knife, which had blood on it, as also had his clothes. The man was detained and the police went to the house, where the woman was found lying dead on the floor with her throat cut. Several wounds had been inflicted in the shape of stabs and cuts. The body was seen by a medical man, who pronounced life to be extinct. When the charge with the murder, Brown declared that he had committed it in its consequence of the woman's unfaithfulness. He had been brooding over her misconduct since his return from a convalescent home to which he had been sent after treatment for an acute illness in Westminster Hospital. The woman is stated to be nearly the age of her husband, who is 45. When at the police station, Brown was quiet, calm, and did not appear to have been drinking to excess. But it is said that he has of late been holy frig, peculiar in his manner. He will be brought up at the Westminster Police Court this morning. The Times of the following day reported on the hearing. Brown was described as a man of rather powerful build, and he was charged before the magistrate, Mr. Partridge, with the murder of his wife, Sarah. It was stated that the deceased woman unsuccessfully invoked the assistance of the authorities to put her husband under restraint as a person who was at times unaccountable for his actions and likely to murder her, and that on Saturday night, in a state of terror, she went to the Paracal District Medical Officer and also expressed her apprehensions to the police. On the arrival of Detective Sergeant Woldog at the address, he found 2 little boys standing at the door crying. Brown was their stepfather. A witness, a next-door neighbor, Mr. Charles Redding of 12 Agency Gardens, stated that he had heard a scuffle shortly before 11 o'clock in the front room from the next door. He had heard a distressed cry from the woman of, "Oh, don't," followed by a dull thud on the floor. The story given by the stepchildren was that their mother was planning to leave Brown that night. He had returned from work on the Saturday afternoon and told her that he had something in a box for her. 6 or 7 weeks previously, Brown had been to Westminster Hospital, where he was kept for 3 or 4 weeks. He subsequently went to a convalescent home, and on his return, there was something the matter with him. He kept saying that their mother let men into the house, and he would look for them before he went to work in the morning. When he came home at night, he would light matches to peer into corners, and on one night, he had walked around and lit an entire box of matches. He had sharpened a large knife every day before the woman at both dinner and tea times, although he did not use it with his meals. When Brown returned from work on Saturday, the mother had told to her son, Robert Young, 9 years, that Brown was going to kill her. All in all, it is a distressing tale, and it's amazing to think that this killing occurred within 2 hours of the murder of Elizabeth Stride. Hey, Teresa. And I didn't post it in Discord either. Sorry. For an overall summary of the Strive murder, we turn again to Chief Inspector Donald S. Swanson and a report dated 19th October 1888 to the Home Office. The subject is the murder of Elizabeth Stride at Duffields, Yard Burner Street, body found at 1 a.m. on the 30th of September 1888. I beg to report that the following are the particulars respecting the murder of Elizabeth Stride on the morning of 30th September 1888. So this is the one that I believe is done by Jack the Ripper, and the other one was the poor wife. 1 a.m., 30th September. A body of a woman was found with the throat cut, but not otherwise mutilated, by Louis Diemschitz. Diemschitz. It's German or Dutch. I can't pronounce it. Diemschitz. Diemschitz. I think that's it. Secretary to the Socialist Club inside the gates of Duffield's Yard in Burner Street, Commercial Road East, who gave information to the police. PC 252 Lamb proceeded with them to the spot and sent for doctors Blackwell and Phillips. 1:10 a.m. Body examined by the doctors mentioned who pronounced life extinct. The position of the body was as follows: lying on the left side, left arm extended from the elbow. I do not know what that means. Cactus, lying in hand. I'll write it down. Somebody like Dragon Mama, you might know whatever this is. I don't know where to go. Anybody know what that is? Or how to even say it? I said cactus. Like carcass without the R. But it can't be because it's a cactus lying in hand, right over arm, over stomach, back of hand, and inner surface of wrist dotted with blood, legs drawn up, knees fixed, feet close to wall, body still warm, silk handkerchief around the throat, slightly torn corresponding to the angle of the right jaw, throat deeply gashed, and below the right angle, apparent abrasion of skin about 1.25 inches in diameter. Search was made by the yard, but no instrument found. Hey, Autistic Shill. No, nobody's getting notifications, so that sucks. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna actually grab my phone and put it out in my community tab and on Twitter. Okay, be right back. I'll do that quickly. You didn't get one yesterday either, eh? What the- It's a pleasant smelling lozenge sucked to mask bad breath. Yeah, you didn't get one yesterday. To mask a bad smell, so it's like it's pronounced cashew. So there was a cashew That is some strange spelling. I would have said cactus. From inquiries made, it was found that at 12:35 a.m. on the 30th, police chief, which was 452 H. Smith, saw a man and woman, the latter with a red rose, talking in Burner Street. This PC, on seeing the body, identified it as being that of the woman whom he had seen, and he thus describes the man as about 28, heights 5 feet 7 inches. Uh, he was dark, small dark mustache. Dress is a black diagonal coat, hard felt hat, white collar and tie. 12:45 a.m. on the 30th, Israel Schwartz at 22 Helen Street, Back Church Lane, stated that at the hour on turning into Burner Street from Commercial Road and had got as far as the gateway where the murder was committed, he saw a man stop and speak to a woman who was standing in the gateway. The man tried to pull the woman into the street, but he turned her around and threw her down on the footway, and the woman screamed 3 times, but not very loudly. Crossing to the opposite side of the street, he saw a second man standing lighting his pipe. The man who threw the woman down called out, apparently, to the man on the opposite side of the road, Lipsky, and then Schwartz walked away. But finding that he was followed by the second man, he ran as far as the railway arch, but the man did not follow so far. Why didn't he help the woman? Like, that's just. What? Okay, here's a marginal note. It says, the use of Lipsky increases my belief that the murderer was a Jew. Swartz cannot say whether the two men were together or known to each other. Upon being taken to the mortuary, Swartz identified the body as that of the woman he had seen, and he thus describes the first man who threw the woman down at about age 30, 5 feet 5 inches. His composite was fair haired, dark, small brown mustache, full face, broad shouldered. Dress was dark jacket and trousers, black cap with peak, had nothing in his hands. Second man, age 35, height 5 feet 11 inches, complexion fresh, hair light brown, mustache brown, dress dark overcoat, old black hard felt hat, wide brim, had a clay pipe in his hand. About 1 a.m. 30th, Leon Goldstein of 22 Christian Street, Commercial Road, called at Lehman Street and stated that he was the man that passed down Burner Street with a black bag at that hour, that the bag contained empty cigarette boxes, and that he had left a coffee house in Spectacle Alley a short time before. Here again is another marginal note. No, what's wrong with you? You can't just throw things. It's you're back, girl. Here, come on. Brat. It's Who saw this man go down Burner Street, or did he come forward to clear himself in any case? Questions might be asked. Dumbest thing. Ah. The description of the man seen by the PC was circulated amongst police by wire and by authority of commissioner is also given to the press. On the evening of the 30th, the man Swartz gave the description of the man that he had seen by the PC was circulated amongst. I just read that. So he gave the description of the man he's seen. Yeah, I think I need to do a cat video on her. Holy. On the evening of the 30th, the man Swartz gave the description of the man he had seen 10 minutes later than the PC, and it was circulated by wire. It will be observed that, allowing for differences of opinion between the PC and Swartz as to apparent age and height of the man each saw with the woman whose body they both identified, there are serious differences in the description of dress. Thus, the PC describes the dress of the man whom he saw as a black diagonal coat, hard felt hat, while Swartz describes the dress of the man he saw as a dark jacket, black cap with peak. So that is at least rendered doubtful whether they're describing the same man. Well, it was dark out, I'm assuming, so Maybe they thought, I don't know. That's what they thought they saw. It's kind of similar. I don't know. Were you mad? Are you mad? Mm. If Swartz is to be believed, and the police report of his statement casts no doubt upon it, it follows if they are describing different men. Do you want a video? That the man Swartz saw and described as the more probable of the two to be the murderer. For a quarter of an hour afterwards, the body is found murdered. You love the smell of rain? I always find it smells like earth, dead leaves, and worms. I don't know. I don't like it. At the same time, account must be taken of the fact that the throat only of the victim was cut in this instance, which measured by time, considering meeting, if with a man other than Swartz saw, the time for the agreement and the murderous action would, I think, be a question of so many minutes, 5 at least, 10 at most, so that I respectfully submit it is not clearly proved that the man that Swartz saw is the murderer, although it is clearly the more probable of the two. Here's another marginal note. This is rather confused. If the man whom the police saw is not the same as the man who Swartz saw at 12:45, then it's clearly more probable that the man whom Swartz saw was the murderer because Swartz saw his man a quarter of an hour later than the PC. But I understand the inspector to suggest that Swartz man need not have been the murderer. Truly, only 15 minutes elapsed between 12:45 when Swartz saw the man and and one when the woman was found murdered on the same spot, but the suggestion is that Schwartzman may have left her, she being a prostitute, that accosted or was accosted by another man, and there was enough time for this to take place and for this other man to murder her before one. The police apparently do not suspect the second man, whom Swartz saw on the other side of the street and who followed Swartz. Before concluding and dealing with the descriptions of these two men, I venture to insert here, for the purpose of the comparison with these two descriptions, the description of a man seen with a woman in the church passage close to Mitre Square at 1:35 a.m. 30th by two men coming out of a club close by. Age 30, height 5 foot 7 or 8 inches, complexions fair mustache, medium build, dress pepper and salt color, loose jacket, gray cloth cap, and peak of the same color, reddish handkerchief tied in a knot, round neck, appearance of a sailor. In this case, I understand from city police that Mr. Lewin, one of the men, identified the clothes only of the murdered woman, Eddowes. That's Catherine Eddowes. Which is a serious drawback to the value of the description of the man. 10 minutes afterwards, the body is found horribly mutilated, and it is therefore reasonable to believe that the man he saw was the murderer. But for purposes of comparison, this description is much nearer to that given by Swartz than that given by the police chief. The body was identified as that of Elizabeth Stride, a prostitute, and it may be shortly stated, for the inquiry into her history did not disclose the slightest pretext for a motive on behalf of friends or associates or anybody who had known her. The action of police, besides being continued in the directions mentioned in the report respecting the murder of Annie Chapman, was as follows. A. Immediately after the police were on the spot, the whole of the members who were in the Socialist Club were searched, their clothes examined, and their statements taken. B. Extended inquiries were made in Berners Street to ascertain if any person was seen with the woman. C. Leaflets were printed and distributed in H Division asking the occupiers of houses to give information to the police of any suspicious persons lodging in their houses. D. The numerous statements made to police were inquired into and the persons, of whom they were many, were required to account for their presence at the time of the murders, and every care taken as far as possible to verify the statements. Hey, Kimmy. Concurrently with inquiry under head A, the yard where the body was found was searched, but no instrument was found. Arising out of head B, And Mr. Packer, a fruitier at Burner Street, stated that at 11 p.m., 29 September, a young man aged 25 to 30, about 5 feet 7 inches, dressed long black coat, buttoned up, soft felt hat, kind of Yankee hat, rather broad shoulders, rough voice, rather quick speaking, with the woman wearing a geranium like flower, white outside, red inside, and he sold him half a pound of grapes. The man and another woman went to the other side of the road and stood talking till 11:30 p.m. Then they went towards this Club Socialist, apparently listening to the music. I remember in the movie, um, one of the prostitutes, I can't remember which one, but she was found with grapes, and the police officer was saying, "Grapes? What would a whore be doing with grapes? They can't afford grapes." Like, it was like a luxury back then. So I'm wondering if it's true, like, if this girl was found, Elizabeth Stride, if she was found with grapes on her. The man and the woman went to the other side of the road and stood talking till 11:30 p.m. Then they went towards the Club Socialist, apparently listening to the music. Mr. Packer, when asked by the police, stated that he did not see any suspicious persons about, and it was not until after the publication in the newspapers of the description of the man seen by the police chief that Mr. Packer gave the foregoing particulars to two private inquiry men acting conjointly with the Vigilance Committee and the press, who, upon searching a drain in the yard, found a grape stem, which was amongst the other matters swept from the yard after its examination by the police, and then calling upon Mr. Packer, whom they took to the mortuary, where he identified the body of Elizabeth Stride as that of the woman. Packer, who's an elderly man, has unfortunately made different statements, so that apart from the fact of the hour at which he saw the woman, and she was seen afterwards by the police chief and Swartz as stated, any statement he made would be rendered almost valueless as evidence. Under head 80,000 pamphlets to occupier were issued and a house inquiry made, not only involving the result of inquiries from the occupiers, but also a search by police, and with a few exceptions, but not such as to convey suspicion, covered the area bounded by the city police boundary on the one hand, Lamb Street Commercial Street, Great Eastern Railway, and Buxton Street, then Albert Street, Dunk Street, Chicksand Street, and Great Garden Street to Whitechapel Road, and then to city boundary. Under his head, also common lodging houses were visited, and over 2,000 lodges were examined. Inquiry was also made by Thames Police as to the sailors on board ships and docks or river, and extended inquiry as to who's present in London. About 80 persons have been detained at different police stations, and the Metropolitan and their statements, taken and verified by police and inquiry, has been made into the movements of a number of persons, estimated at upwards of 300 respecting whom communications were received by police, and such inquiries are being continued. 76 butchers and slaughterers have been visited, and the characters of the men employed inquired into. This embraces all servants who had been employed for the past 6 months. Inquiries have also been made as to the alleged presence in London of Greek gypsies, but it was found that they had not been in London during the time of the previous murders. 3 of the persons calling themselves cowboys, who belonged to the American exhibition, were traced and satisfactorily accounted for themselves. Up to date, although the number of letters daily is considerably lessened, the other inquiries respecting alleged suspicious persons continues as numerous. There are now 994 dockets besides police reports. Signed, Donald S. Swanson, Chief Inspector. Hey, Heavenly Cow. Thus, the very extensive Metropolitan Police inquiries instigated at the time of the Stride murder are outlined by Swanson. The area designated for police house-to-house inquiries, as stated above, is strange that it does not extend south of the commercial road to include the Burner Street area. However, it may be that the area surrounding Burner Street was so thoroughly covered immediately after the murder that it did not require inclusion in the later house-to-house inquiries. Some strength is given to the possibility by the fact that the Burner Street house-to-house inquiries are known to have included Packer's address. The reports concerning the Stride murder are quite extensive and cover various aspects of the case raised in the inquiry. A report dated 1st November 1888, written by Inspector Eberlein, refers to the witness Swartz. Subject is Whitechapel murders, reference to papers. 1119, with reference to the annexed copy extract from Home Office letter. I beg to report that since a Jew named Lipsky was hanged for the murder of a Jewess in 1887, the name has very frequently been used by persons, a mere ejaculation by way of endeavoring to insult the Jew to whom it has been addressed, and as Swartz has a strong Jewish appearance, I am of opinion it was addressed to him as he stopped to look at the man he saw ill using the deceased woman. I questioned Israel Swartz very closely at the time he made the statement as to whom the man addressed when he called Lipsky, but he was unable to say. There was only one other person to be seen in the street, and that was a man on the opposite side of the road in the act of lighting a pipe. Swartz, being a foreigner, was unable to speak English, became alarmed and ran away. The man whom he saw lighting his pipe also ran in the same direction as himself, but whether this man was running after him or not, he could not tell. He might have been alarmed, the same as himself, and ran away. A house-to-house inquiry was made in Berners Street with a view to ascertain whether any persons was seen acting suspiciously, or any noise heard on the night in question, but without result. Inquiries have also been made in the neighborhood, but no person named Lipsky could be found. With regard to the second question, I beg to report that searching inquiries were made by Sergeant Froist, an officer, in Aberdeen Place, St. John's Wood, the last address of the insane medical student named John Sanders. But only information that could be obtained was a lady named Sanders resided with her son at number 20, but left there to go abroad about 2 years ago. And this is from Aberdeen Inspector Superintendent. This report followed in the files by a draft letter from Robert Anderson to the Home Office. Draft letter to H.O. with reference to your letter, N.C. I have to state that the opinion arrived in this department upon the evidence of Swartz and the inquest in Elizabeth Stride's case is that the name Lipsky, which he alleges was used by a man whom he saw assaulting the woman in Berners Street on the night of the murder, was not addressed to the supposed accomplice, but to Swartz himself. It appears that since the Lipsky case, it has come to be used as an epithet in addressing or speaking of Jews. With regard to the later portion of your letter, I have to state that copy passage in the report is written in blue. All right. I'm going to stop there. I got a video. This chapter is pretty long. So this is the one about Mary Nichols. And this is Jack the Ripper's first victim.
The life and death of Mary Ann Nichols, murdered on August the 31st, 1888. Mary Ann Nichols, or Polly Nichols as she was often called by her family, friends and acquaintances, was born Mary Ann Walker on the 26th of August 1845 at Dawes Court off Shoe Lane in the City of London. She was the second of 3 children of Edward and Caroline Walker. We know next to nothing about her childhood and teenage years, other than that her teenage sweetheart was a boy of the same age as her by the name of Thomas Stuart Drew. However, this relationship had ended by 1863 when she met a printer by the name of William Nichols. On the 16th of January 1864, when she was 18, Mary married William Nichols in the church of St. Bride's, Fleet Street, where a plaque on the wall inside the church now commemorates their wedding.
And then we need to do the death of Martha Tabram.
The newlyweds
We
lived
read
for a
that,
short
but
time in
we never
Bouverie
watched
Street
this.
off
I don't know, this
Fleet
guy
Street
interests me.
before moving south of the river to live with her father, Edward Walker, at 131
What
Trafalgar
page?
Street in Walworth,
We are
at which
on
address they would reside for the next 10 years.
142.
The couple would have 5 children together. Edward John,
Oh, I
born
probably
in
got it. It just never shows
1866,
up on my phone. I'll
Percy
look up my
George,
computer when
born in
we're done here.
1868,
Heavenly cow.
Alice Esther, born in 1870, Elizabeth Sarah, born in 1877, and Henry Alfred, born in
You're
1879.
welcome.
Around 1875, the family moved into their own flat in D Block in Peabody Buildings, Stamford Street, in the Southwark district of South London. For this, they
There's
paid a weekly rent of
758 pages
5 shillings
in
and
this book.
ninepence. Although the estate still survives, D Block was
Small.
demolished in the 1970s in order to reduce the density of dwellings on the estate, and the children's play area now stands on its site.
747.
Over the next 5 years, Mary began drinking heavily, and her mental state could not have been helped by the fact that her husband William had an affair with the woman who looked after Mary when she gave birth to their last child, Henry Alfred. According to Mary's father, William left Mary to live for a time with this woman, and it was therefore William's infidelity that lay behind their marital difficulties. William, on the other hand, maintained that it was Mary's drinking that was responsible, and he would later
Every single one of these women are prostitutes, and every single one of them are drunks, and every single one of them have left their husbands for cheating. I mean, for the murderer to know that, he's been watching, like, very closely. That's scary.
state that she had in fact left him on several occasions. Whoever was at fault, in September 1880, the couple separated altogether and Mary moved out of the family home. Their children remained with William, with the exception of their eldest son, Edward, who went to live with Mary's father. William agreed to pay her a weekly maintenance allowance of 5 shillings, and Mary became a resident at Lambeth Workhouse, parts of which still survive, close to Elephant and Castle, in South London. She would reside at the
Here's
workhouse until the 31st of May, 1881, when she left to move in with
Last
a man
chapter, I think,
whose
is
identity
44.
is unknown.
Nope. It's yep.
Around
Okay, so
this
page
time, William claimed to have found out that she was leading an immoral life,
724 starts
presumably
with
referring to the
sources.
fact that she was living with another man, although some commentators hold that he meant that he had discovered that she was working as a prostitute. Either way, he used this as an excuse to stop paying the maintenance allowance to her. Mary appealed to the parish authorities, who intervened on her behalf and demanded that William pay her the outstanding money. He argued that she had deserted him,
And then
leaving him with their children
736
to bring up, and pointing out that she was,
starts
in
the
fact,
Chronicles of
now living
Events.
with another man. Mary lost the
It's
case,
a pretty
and
big
William
book.
would thereafter only see her occasionally, the last time being about 3 years before her death in 1888. By April 1882, the relationship with the unidentified man was over, and on the 24th of that month, she once again went to reside at Lambeth Workhouse, where she would remain until the 24th of March, 1883, when she moved back in with her father, Edward Walker, at
Is it this
131
one?
Trafalgar Street. He also became somewhat perturbed by her heavy drinking. He would tell the inquest into her death that she was not a sober woman, and this had caused disagreements between them. He also stated that he did not think that she was promiscuous, and she certainly didn't stay out particularly late at night. The worst he had seen of her, he said, was her keeping company with females of a certain class. On the 21st of May, 1882, they argued over her drinking, and the next day she moved out and went to reside once again at Lambeth Workhouse.
Okay, it's the same book then.
In June 1883,
Sometimes that
she
happens. They
rekindled her
probably cut out
relationship
all
with
the
her teenage
indexes and
sweetheart,
everything, 'cause that's
Thomas
pretty
Stuart
big
Drew,
chunk.
who was by then a widower, and she moved in with him at the house and shop where he lived and worked as a blacksmith at 15 York Street, Walworth, in South London. Their relationship ended in 1887 when, according to later newspaper reports, Mary made away with some of his goods for drink, and having been abandoned by him, she once more began spending time at various workhouses, including her regular haunt at Lambeth. In October 1887, she may have joined the hundreds of homeless who were sleeping
Yeah,
rough in
possibly
Trafalgar
Zuna.
Square, many of whom ignored an order issued by the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, on Monday the 23rd of October to clear the square, and who were therefore arrested and charged with wandering abroad without any visible means of sustenance. On the morning of Tuesday the 25th of October, those who had been taken into police custody the previous night appeared at Bow Street Police Court, and amongst them was a Mary Ann Nichols. It isn't certain whether this was the Mary Nichols who, within a year, would become the first of the canonical five.
Also, can you guys check and see if you're subscribed? A lot of people are getting unsubscribed, like, oh my god, my channel is not going anywhere. If anything, I just keep losing. And then people are telling me they're unsubscribed, they're not getting notifications. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on with YouTube, but it's making me very angry because it sucks for both of us as the creator and the subscriber and/or members, right? So the only way you're not supposed to miss anything I do is if you subscribe, hit the bell, but hit all. There's like 3 different things there and hit all. There's like personal and then all. I always hit all for all mine so then that way I don't miss anything. But for some people, it's not working and it's pissing me off.
5 victims of Jack the Ripper. But if it was, the newspapers were somewhat unflattering about her, describing her as the worst woman in the square, and going on to say that at the police station she was very disorderly. Thereafter, Mary returned to flitting between workhouses, and by April 1888 she was back at Lambeth Workhouse. Here she befriended a girl by the name of Mary Ann Monk. The workhouse matron, Mrs. Fielder, then intervened and got Mary a job working as a domestic servant in the household of Samuel and Sarah Cowdrey at Ingleside, Rosehill Road in Wandsworth. Mary began working for them on the 12th of May,
Right, Dad?
1888, and from their house she wrote
Oh,
to her
thanks,
father,
Hannah.
who had not seen her for 2 years, to tell him of her new situation, in which she seemed to have been quite content. Her letter read, "I just write to say you will be glad to know that I am settled in my new place and going on all right up to now. My people went out yesterday and have not returned, so I am left in charge. It is a grand place inside, with trees and gardens back and front. All has been newly done up. They are teetotalers and religious, so I ought to get on. They are very nice people.
They're very nice people, and I have not too much to do. I hope you're all right, and the boy has work. So good. Bye for the present. From yours truly, Polly. Answer soon, please, and let me know how you are. Polly, that name rings a bell too.
And I have not too much to do. I hope you are all right, and the boy has..." Edward wrote a letter in reply, but he heard nothing more from his daughter. Then, on the 12th of July, 1888, he received a postcard from Mrs. Sarah Cowdrey, informing him that his daughter had absconded and had stolen clothing worth an excess of £3 10s from her employers. By early August 1888, Mary Ann Nichols had made her way to the East End of London, where she moved into
Pretty sure I have
Wilmots,
that
a
photo too.
female-only common lodging
Not
house
photo, drawing, I
located
should
at
say.
18 Thrall Street in Spitalfields. Here, she was known to the other residents as Polly. She shared a room with 3 other women, one of whom was an elderly lady by the name of Emily Holland, who was also referred to in some reports as Ellen Holland, with whom Mary became friendly. Emily would later remember Mary as having been a very clean woman who kept herself to herself as if she was melancholy, and who gave her the impression of being weighed down by some trouble. Although she did concede that she had seen Mary the worse for drink once or twice, Emily also stated that Mary never used to be fond of men, adding that, "I don't think she was a fast woman." On the 24th of August 1888, Mary left Wilmots and went to reside at a mixed-sex common lodging house known as the White House, which was situated at number 56 Flower and Dean Street. Here she would spend her last and 43rd birthday on Sunday the 26th of August 1888. It was never established how she spent what would be the last few days of her life. The morning of Thursday, the 30th of August, 1888, was, according to one newspaper,
Like in these photos, they're not even photos, a lot of them are drawings, and these people are drawing every single thing they see at the murder scene. Like, it's really bad. It's really graphic. And then they got writings all around it about what body part is what, that he's either removed or thrown beside the body. It's wow.
magnificently fine, making a welcome change from the cold and wet conditions that had helped turn the summer of
Oh, don't
1888
cry.
into one of the worst on record. However, in the early afternoon, dark clouds gathered over London, and at about 2:30, a heavy
You're on the
thunderstorm
personal
erupted, sending flashes of vivid bright lightning streaking across the sky as the rain fell in torrents for several hours. In the East End of London, houses close to the River Thames were flooded,
Oh,
and their
good.
residents were rendered homeless.
You're so used to her too? Okay.
Then, at 9 o'clock that night, a great fire broke out at a spirits warehouse in the East London docks.
Yeah, me too, Zuna.
Firefighters
For
from all over the
other
district
people I
raced to the
watch.
scene, where they had managed to bring the fire under control by soon after midnight. But as the exhausted firemen were returning to their stations, the call reached them that another, even more destructive fire had broken out in the Ratcliffe Drive.
Oh, yeah. So you're still separate? Good. Oh, that's good. I'm glad it works for you guys. Good. Um, so I got 2 more books. One's coming Wednesday, one's coming Thursday, and I got the book that Ellie Bly wrote about her time in the madhouse, 10 Days in Madhouse. So I'm going to read that one as well as um, Letters from the Attic, I believe it's called. And that one is all the letters from an insane asylum that are in a suitcase that are in an attic. And this is all true story as well. So we have more letters to read. I was like, yeah. So Wednesday and Thursday I'll be getting those books. So Wednesday I'll start. I can't remember which one. I think I get the Ellie Bly one. I'll start Wednesday. But I just love that stuff. So I got another book. And then of course the Ellie Bly one. Yeah, me too. Heavenly Cow. What book are you getting, Deb? I forget. Or maybe I don't even know. But the Ellie Bly one will be interesting. I can't wait to read that. Considering those or no, they're not from that. They're all about the same thing. Not the same hospital, but very
By dock,
interesting.
and they had no choice but to turn around and race back to fight this raging inferno. Fires often drew crowds of spectators, and many EastEnders that night headed for the docks to enjoy the spectacle, and among them was Emily Holland. Meanwhile, in the Frying Pan pub at the junction of Thrall Street and Brick Lane, a building that still stands, although it's no longer a pub,
Never mind. I do know.
Mary
Can't wait
Nichols
for that
finished a
either.
drink and then headed off along Thrall Street to try and gain admission
You're
to
not a
Wilmot's.
copycat. It's what we
It
both
was later
love. I'm
stated
glad you're
that
doing
at
it.
this time she was the worse for drink, but not drunk. However, since she didn't have the required fourpence to pay for her bed, she was told by the
Everybody
deputy
goes sub to
keeper that
Zuna.
she couldn't stay there, and she was escorted from the premises. She was wearing a bonnet that none of the other residents had seen her with before, and
I'll be
since
back.
she was probably intending to
Book
resort to
club. Book
prostitution
club.
in order to
Book
raise
club?
the required lodging house
No,
fee,
not book
she
club.
evidently felt
That's
that this
sex.
would prove irresistible
What am I
to
thinking
potential
about?
clients.
Phone booth. Yes,
As
phone
she
booth.
left Wilmot's, she turned back to the deputy keeper and laughingly told him, "I'll see you get my DOS money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now." So saying, she headed off into the early morning. By 2 a.m., the fire in the docks had been all but brought under control, and Emily Holland set off to walk back to Wilmot's. Heading along Whitechapel Road, she passed St. Mary's Church and had just turned into Osborne Street at around 2:30 a.m. when she saw a drunken Mary Nichols staggering towards her from the direction of Brick Lane. Mary stopped, and leaning against the shutters of the grocer's shop at the junction of Osborne Street and Whitechapel Road, she boasted to Emily that she had made her lodging money 3 times over, but had spent it. Concerned at her drunken state, Emily tried to persuade Mary to come back to Wilmot's with her, telling her that she would get her a bed. Mary refused the offer, but also bemoaned the fact that she had no money, informing Emily that she must make up the amount of her lodging. Then, confidently predicting that it won't be long before I'll be back, Mary staggered off along Whitechapel Road, and Emily set off through Osborne Street to head back to Wilmot's. That was the last time that anyone other than her killer would see Mary Nichols alive. At some point during the next hour, Mary would meet a man with whom she would go to a secluded gateway in a nearby dark thoroughfare called Bucks Row, and by the time she realized the evil of his intent, it would be too late for poor Polly Nichols. At 3:30 a.m., Charles Cross left his home in Doveton Street, Bethnal Green, and set off to walk to his place of work at Pickford's near Liverpool Street, where he was employed as a carman or delivery driver. Heading along Brady Street, he turned into Bucks Row and commenced walking along its right side. As he approached the looming bulk of the 1876 board school, which dominated the western end of the first section of Bucks Row, he noticed a dark bundle lying in a gateway on the opposite side of the street. As with many of the district's thoroughfares, street
Well,
lighting
shit
in
took
Bucks
my
Row was
spot.
minimal, so at first Cross could not be sure exactly what the bundle was. It looked something like a discarded tarpaulin, and so, thinking that it might prove useful for his job, Cross went to inspect it. But as he drew closer, he realized it was in fact the plain form
Yes,
of a
I
woman
do
who was either
believe
dead or
you are
drunk,
correct,
could be
Teresa.
certain which, and he stopped in his tracks. As Cross stood rooted to the spot, unsure of what to do next, he heard footsteps approaching from the direction that he had just come from.
I
Turning,
love
he saw another
reading.
carter, Robert Paul, walking towards him. "Come and look over here," Cross called. "There's a woman lying on the pavement." The two men stepped over the road and stooped down over the prostrate figure. She was lying on her back, her legs were straight out, and her skirts were raised almost over her waist. Charles Cross
That's
reached out
funny.
and touched her face, which was warm, and her hands, which were cold and limp. "I believe she is dead," he observed. Robert Paul, meanwhile, placed his hand on the woman's chest
I didn't know.
and
Do you
thought he
have a
felt a
channel
slight movement.
or no,
"I think she's
Zuna?
breathing," he said.
Okay, you
very
had to
little,
make one
if
so you
she
could
is.
comment. Yeah, I don't.
Paul
think-
suggested that they sit the woman up, but Cross refused to touch her again. So, deciding, perhaps somewhat callously, that they were late for work and had done as much as they could, they pulled the woman's skirts back down over her knees to cover her decency, and then they set off for their respective places of employment, agreeing that they would tell the first policeman they encountered of their find.
You spot
But what
thief.
neither man had noticed in the pitch darkness of Bucks Row was that the woman's throat had been slashed so savagely that, according to some newspaper reports, her head had almost been.
That's another thing. All the victims' throats have been, you know, every single one of them. But this one, her Mary Nichols, I don't believe that she had anything removed. I think it was the second victim, Martha Tabron, that had started when things start getting removed, I believe.
Severed from her body.
Oh,
That
never
discovery was
mind.
made by Beat Officer Police Constable John Neal, who turned into Bucks Row and proceeded to walk past the board school shortly after Cross and Paul had left the scene. There was not a soul about, he later told the inquest into the woman's death. "I had been round there half an hour previously, and I saw no one then. I was on the right side
Is
when I
that her
noticed a
friggin'
figure lying in the
intestines?
street. It was dark at the time. I examined the body by the aid of my lamp and noticed blood oozing from a wound in the throat. She was lying on her back with her clothes disarranged. I felt her arm, which was quite warm from the joints upwards. Her eyes were wide open, her bonnet was off and lying at her side." As Neil stooped down over the body, he noticed PC John Thane passing the end of the street, and he flashed his lantern to attract his attention. "Here's a woman with her throat cut," he called to his approaching colleague.
Yeah,
"Run at
it
once for
ain't
Dr.
gonna
Llewellyn."
happen.
As Thane hurried off to fetch the medic, PC Mizzen, who had been alerted by Cross and Paul, arrived at the scene. Neil sent him to bring reinforcements and asked him to also fetch the police ambulance. Dr. Llewellyn arrived at around 4 a.m. and carried out a cursory examination of the body. Noting the severity of the wounds to the throat, he pronounced life extinct. On closer examination, he also observed that the deceased's body and legs were still warm, although her hands and wrists were quite cold. This led him to surmise that she could not have been dead for more than half an hour. In fact, this observation by the doctor suggests that the murderer may well have still been at the scene when Charles Cross came strolling along Bucks Row on his way to work. As Llewellyn went about his grim business, news of the murder was beginning to filter through the immediate neighbourhood. In adjacent Winthrop Street, there stood a horse slaughterer's yard, where 3 slaughtermen, Harry Tompkins, James Mumford, and Charles Britton, had been working through the night. They heard nothing and knew nothing of the murder until informed of it by PC Thane as he passed their premises en route to fetch Dr. Llewellyn. They had then gone round to view the body and remained at the scene until the woman was removed to the mortuary. The 3 men would later find themselves under suspicion and were interrogated separately by the police before being eliminated as suspects. Dr. Llewellyn was now becoming a little disconcerted at the number of sightseers that were arriving at the scene, and he ordered that the body be removed to the mortuary, where he would make a further examination. Thane and Neil duly lifted the body onto the police ambulance, which in reality was little more than a wooden handcart. As they did so, Thane noticed that the back of the woman's clothing was soaked with blood, which he presumed had run down from the neck wound. He also observed a mass of congealed blood underneath the body, which was around 6 inches in diameter and which had begun to run towards the gutter. Evidently, most of the blood had been absorbed into the clothing, a fact that was all too apparent to PC Thane, whose hands became covered in the stuff as he lifted the body onto the ambulance. The ambulance was then trundled off through the streets to the mortuary of the nearby Whitechapel Workhouse Infirmary. At 4:30 a.m., Inspector Spratling was on Hackney Road when word reached him that a body had been found in Bucks Row. He hurried to the scene of the crime, where he found one of the residents washing the blood away and was informed that the body had been removed to the mortuary. Spratling headed round to the mortuary, which in reality was little more than a brick shed, and there he began taking down the description of the deceased.
No, I think she's talking
At
about
first, he
me.
noticed only the neck wounds
My
previously
last.
noted by Dr. Llewellyn, but on closer inspection, he discovered something that had so far eluded everyone. Beneath the blood-stained clothing, a deep gash ran all
Did
the way
you?
along the woman's abdomen. She had been
Bless you.
disemboweled. Spratling sent immediately for Dr. Llewellyn in order that he might comment on the newly discovered injuries. But before the medic had arrived and could carry out a more detailed inspection, 2 senile workhouse paupers, Robert Mann and James Hatfield, stripped the body of its clothing and proceeded to wash it down, dumping the garments in an untidy pile in the mortuary yard and, in so doing, destroying any clues that might be present. The coroner would later criticise the police for allowing this to happen, whereas the police were adamant that they had given instructions that the body was not to be disturbed until Llewellyn had conducted a full and detailed post-mortem examination. The first problem to confront the police as they launched their investigation into the Bucks Row murder was that of identifying the victim. Her clothing was, so Lloyd's Weekly newspaper
She
later
got stabbed
reported,
in the
of a
face here, it
common
looks like.
description. The only articles in the pockets were a comb and a piece of looking glass. This led the police to conclude that the murdered woman was an inhabitant of the numerous lodging houses of the neighbourhood, and officers were dispatched to make inquiries at these establishments. As the news of the murder
So
spread,
crazy to have to
first
live
one
like
woman
that.
and then another came forward to view the body, and at length it was found that a woman answering the description of the murdered woman had lodged in a common lodging house at 18 Thrall Street in Spitalfields.
18.
Residents from that lodging house were therefore taken to the mortuary, where they identified the victim as a woman they had known as Polly. Meanwhile, Inspector Spratling had noticed that the skirt of one petticoat and the band of another article of clothing bore the stencil stamp of Lambeth Workhouse, and detectives were immediately dispatched there to get the matron to view the body and see if she could identify the victim. She couldn't do so, and stated that the clothing might have been issued at any time during the past 2 or 3 years. However, further inquiries led the police to Mary Ann Monk, with whom Mary Nichols had struck up a friendship during her most recent stay at the workhouse in April and May 1888. On the evening of Friday, the 31st of August, Mary Ann Monk was taken to the mortuary and, having viewed the body twice, identified her as Mary Ann Nichols, also known as Polly Nichols. Acting on information provided by Mary Ann Monk, the
So her
police were
nickname
then
was
able
Polly?
to trace Edward Walker, and on Saturday, the 1st of September, he was taken
I
to the
remember
mortuary,
hearing that
where he
name, but
formally identified the body as being that of
not
his
for
daughter,
her.
Mary Ann Nichols. On the afternoon of Saturday, the 1st of September, at the Working Lads Institute on Whitechapel Road, Win Edwin Baxter, the coroner for South East Middlesex, opened the inquest into the death of Mary Ann Nichols. The first witness was her father, Edward Walker, who confirmed that the victim was his daughter, Mary Ann Nichols, and he then went on to give details of
Yeah,
her
that
life.
was in the book.
He was followed by Police Constable John Neal, who testified to having found the body in Bucks Row. The final witness of the day was Dr. Ralph Rees Llewellyn, who outlined the horrendous injuries that the victim had suffered. At the conclusion of the doctor's evidence, the coroner then adjourned the inquest for 2 days. Later that evening, Mary Nichols' eldest son, Edward, arrived at the mortuary and was taken in to see the body, which he immediately recognised as being that of his mother. One newspaper commented that he seemed much affected by her untimely end. An hour later, Mary's estranged husband, William, turned up and was taken in to view the body. He too was greatly affected at the sight that greeted him, and he whispered to her, "I forgive you as you are, what you have been to me." According to several newspapers, he came out ashy white and commented, "Well, there is no mistake about it. It has come to a sad end at last." The funeral of Mary Nichols took place on Thursday, the 6th of September, 1888, and great secrecy was adopted in order to keep morbid sightseers away. No one was near as the undertaker and his men carried the remains, contained in a polished elm coffin, to the hearse and conveyed it to the undertakers in nearby Hanbury Street to await the mourners. The mourners, however, were late, and the 2 coaches were kept waiting in a side street. By the time they arrived, news had got out that the body was in the hearse, and people flocked round to see the coffin and to examine the plate on which was the simple inscription, Mary
Oops.
Ann Nichols, aged 42, died August the 31st, 1888. A contingent of police constables, however, surrounded the hearse and prevented the onlookers from getting too close. The mourners, consisting of her father, Edward Walker, and 2 of her children, then boarded the rear coach, and the cortege finally set off. People lined the way as it headed down Hanbury Street, turned right into Baker's Row, where it passed the corner of Bucks Row, where Polly's murder had occurred the previous Friday, and then turned left along Whitechapel Road. Houses on the route had their blinds drawn as a mark of respect, and the onlookers were reported to have expressed their deepest sympathies for the bereaved family members as they went past. At the cemetery, the
What a
mourners
horrible
watched
way
as
to
the
go. I
coffin
mean,
was
that's
lowered into the
just
grave, and Mary Ann Nichols was laid
wow.
to rest.
I don't even have the words.
The inquest into the death of Mary Ann Nichols would continue at the Working Lads Institute on Whitechapel Road on several days over the course
Even
of
still
the
says
next
it.
3 weeks. The coroner, Win
Right up there, it says Working Lads Institute. Wow.
Baxter, opted for an almost forensic approach to the gathering of evidence, and the protracted and detailed nature of his inquiries would provide the newspapers with endless column inches in which they reported all the lurid details that were coming to light. They soon realized that the public appetite for information about the crime was ferocious, and the subsequent press coverage for this and the future atrocities would help turn the Whitechapel murders into an international phenomenon. The inquest concluded on the afternoon of Saturday, the 22nd of September, when the jury returned a verdict of willful murder against some person or persons unknown.
That's
In
what
the
they
weeks and
always
months that
say. The jury always comes back with because they don't know against some person or persons unknown. Yeah, this guy. I've never seen that one.
followed, more murders would occur in the area, each more gruesome than the last, and the media frenzy surrounding the crimes would go into overdrive. In 1892, the residents of Bucks Row petitioned their local council, asking to change the name on account of the notoriety that had become attached to it. The council concurred, and the name of the thoroughfare became Durwood Street, as it still remains. Today, it has changed beyond
Really?
recognition, with only the 1876 board school
I
surviving
didn't
in the
know that.
vicinity,
So they changed Whitechapel to Durrett Street? Huh. Wonder if that's in the book. I don't remember.
still looming over the scene of the murder, just as it did on the 31st of August, 1888. Work on the Crossrail project is currently taking place on and around the site, and a new exit from Whitechapel Station now abuts the spot where the murder of Polly Nichols took place. In the City of London Cemetery, the site of a grave has been reused several times over and is now believed to lie beneath one of the pathways that meanders
What does they mean by the reused?
through the burial ground. However, the cemetery authorities maintain a small memorial plaque to her, and people come from all over the world to place flowers on it and to spend a few quiet moments remembering her and
What's the money
reflecting
for?
on the tragedy of her life and the horror of her death. Some of them even leave coins here, presumably in remembrance of the fact that Mary Ann Polly Nichols met her untimely end because she lacked the meagre sum of fourpence that would have paid for her bed.
All right, kids, I'm gonna go. Um, I was just thinking, what is tomorrow? Monday. Ah, I do have a live at 7. It's the Lethal Marriage, Carla Homolka, Paul Bernardo case again. I'll see if I can find some videos for that too, so we can kind of get our mind off me just reading it. At least I know I need that. That's why I'm only doing that one once a week. It's hard. So I'll be back at 7 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me, guys. And kids. I meant you specifically. By all your comments. I'm just, yeah, I love you. All right, you guys have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow. Bye.